Issue 61. We start out right in the middle of the action with Sonic and Tails and two of the Down Under Freedom Fighters fighting off a crowd of Mobians while the other Down Under Freedom Fighters are trapped in cages above them. And Sonic says a really out of character line where he calls his enemies flat-tailed freaks, which is exactly the same thing Snively said about the wardens of his prison. So Sonic basically was written to use a slur against Mobians in general despite being one himself. That was bad dialogue. In fact, it was so bad that I wondered if this was a fake Sonic because the real one would never be that racist. The fight is ended with me being glad that Tails was allowed to be useful in it, and the ones imprisoned are cut free from their cages, and finally it's explained to me what was going on. You know, I would have been a lot more able to focus on how grateful I am that Sonic's getting to have an adventure down under and flesh it out more if it weren't for the fact that I was confused as all hell from being started out in media res to the point of wondering if I had skipped an issue. It's explained that after Crocbot was found in pieces and just assumed to be dead even though he once hid himself to repair himself, the Down Under Freedom Fighters removed all traces of the prison camp from the crater. I like that attention to detail instead of being forgotten about. Or at least they were in the process of removing all traces of it. But then for no apparent reason, Duckbill Platypus suddenly took off going renegade, and the hippie remarks to it with a very stilted line, "It was totally uncool." Not long after that, the raids began, as Duckbill and their former teammates started leading a guerrilla band of wild duckbills attacking the crater site to ruin their construction job. I hope this is properly explained because these guys seem like the most inexplicable villains ever. Why would they ever do this? Unless they were brainwashed. Then they got a letter from Duckbill telling them to meet up with him, lying that he was willing to negotiate a truce, and they were all stupid and delusional enough to believe it. And that's how some of them got trapped in those cages. Sonic then explains that the new Mobototropolis Council had asked him and Tails to stop here and assess the situation in the crater. Okay, that does explain why he went to a place with no major sub-villain. Also, I like how the girl's hugging and kissing Tails being so adorable, although I hate how he doesn't appreciate it. Why wouldn't he? And throughout this whole recap of stuff I haven't actually seen, I'm getting the feeling of being cheated out of a longer and more cohesive adventure story. As if they wrote a whole story about the Down Under Freedom Fighters by themselves and then had to give up and recap it when they thought these guys weren't popular enough for their own story. At least the kangaroo guy finally shows a personality for once. He complains about Sonic telling his friends to follow him, saying that he gives the orders in Down Under all of a sudden. I never imagined him being the leader, I thought it was the girl, and he insists that they follow him instead, so he's a control freak. I'm glad Sonic shares my sentiments, with him calling him wannabe, told to keep his eyes front and stay alert as if he needs to be told that. It shows that I'm not supposed to like him. While going down a river on a raft, they get attacked. And Tails somehow figures out what the game plan is from Sonic saying the nonsensical, "You prop," while I buzz the perimeter, figuring it to mean that while Sonic spin dashes forwards along the water, Tails shows a creative use of his tail spinning ability by speeding up the boat that way. And not only is Sonic spin dashing along the water, but he also has a magical bullshit power that came completely out of nowhere, where now he can form a protective shield by bending the water around him telekinetically to protect the boat. This would be fine if he had a Chaos Emerald, but he doesn't. They reach Duckbill's hideout where he's whispering to himself about a hostage site and Croc Patrol, making me want to know more, and despite that the girl shows compassion by saying, "Oh dear, he looked awful," and the hippie says, "Oh man, Bill's totally exhausted," after he has to catch him from his passing out. I don't think this will ever be explained. The girl, who still hasn't reminded me of her name yet after eons, says that she can hear mechanical sounds underneath the floor. Gee, I wonder if Crocbot is still alive. Sonic sees the outline of a trapdoor and finds Crocbot under it, who then hits us with another one of his famous walls of text, where he explains that at the prison camp, he implanted a post-hypnotic mind-control diode behind Duckbill's ear. I guess post means it's a very delayed reaction, but what was the point? When he found Crocbot's remains, the sight of it initiated the programming chip in his head, brainwashing him. His first task was to connect Crocbot to a power source so that he could instruct him, and then Crocbot ordered him to raise an army of people who aren't being explained to be brainwashed, so why the hell were they being such evil dicks? Seriously though, I'm guessing they're heavily constrained by comic space limits and that's why they have this wall of text instead of showing you stuff.
but seeing images of flashbacks would still be much more pretty to look at than more than half the panel being text. I'm at least glad we get to have Crocbot be a villain again instead of his concept being wasted as he gets defeated for good off screen. Then Crocbot, still wasting time telling the heroes about his plan because I guess he's arrogant and wants to brag about it, says that the army of duckbills seized combat parts from the site, and he reassembled one had it rebuilt him. Crocbot is about to talk about what happened to him when the bunyip, whatever that is, arrived, but Sonic unfortunately cuts him off before I can hear about that. So for once I'm in total agreement with Wallaby the control freak for yelling at him for his arbitrary decision to unplug Crocbot. The girl takes Sonic's side, saying that they defer to the king, because apparently Down Under is ruled by King Acorn. Does this mean Moby in Australia is ruled by America? What country does the Acorn Kingdom represent? She then says to take Crocbot away, and destroy him hopefully. And I take back what I said about Crocbot returning being satisfying, because it, well, kinda was. We once again get cheated out of seeing Sonic or even the Down Under Freedom Fighters finish him off, as they all get their victory stolen from them out of nowhere by Deus Ex Machina. Off screen! Well, whatever. Hopefully they'll destroy every single bit of Crocbot's remains just in case this time. The girl explains that, as I suspected, the bunyip is a mythological monster of Aborigine culture in Australia. For some bizarre reason, one of her friends insists that it must have been just Crocbot's damaged mind malfunctioning and hallucinating this thing. Dude, you live on a magical planet full of Chaos Emeralds. You have no reason to be skeptical. Also, I'm not sure which one of them was talking because the text bubble's connected to the tail of the green, ugly-looking beaver guy. At least I think he's a beaver. But Wally's right behind him, and that text bubble should have been connected to the green guy's stomach or something instead if he was the one talking. There's no reason for that. Then, oh, Sonic and Tails imply that the girl was actually hitting on Tails instead of just thinking he was a cute little kid. I kinda had that worry in my mind when she was literally hugging and kissing him. That's a little much compared to just a kiss on the forehead for a cute little kid. I don't know how much older she is than him, but I'm assuming she's a teenager, and a completely different, more mature state of life than Tails. So that's kinda creepy. And yet Tails is all excited to meet her, and so we're supposed to totally support this. He says he really hopes that she does dig him because he'd like to see her again. First, I thought he hated being kissed by her. And second, that doesn't have to be the case for you to see her again. A follow-up to the story by Carl Bollers has Sonic flying the biplane with Tails towards a dark cloud shaped like Ix's nuggets, complaining about the rough seawater. Sonic? But it's supposed to be Tails who flies the plane. Anyway, Sonic explains that the reason they were able to track Ix's nuggets instead of wandering around aimlessly in the first place was that a gadget by Uncle Chuck hooked up to the control panels tracking his trail. You know, I could have been told that a lot sooner. But then the trail scatters for no reason with the device going haywire, and Sonic somehow thinks it's just weather interference, even though that cloud shaped like Ix's is so detailed that you'd think he gets suspicious of magical shenanigans right away. Naturally, Ixis blasts the plane down as I wonder how he figured out how Sonic was tracking him. However, for some weird reason, Sonic's lucky enough to steer the plane upwards to drive straight into Ixis and clear up the clouds. The next story immediately starts with an explosion, with Jeffrey and a prison warden jumping away from it, and the warden says that deactivating Robotnik's leftover desktop is one thing, being able to carry out actual field assignments is another, and says that he's getting too old for this. I wish he hadn't said the middle part, because that just confused me about what he actually was doing then. It's revealed that Jeffrey got his job through nepotism, as it used to be his father who was in charge of the Secret Service. That explains why he got it when he's like a teenager. Then we see King Acorn telling Jeffrey that there are new threats arising with Eggman's disappearance, and he has to recruit some very special agents after Lieutenant Fleming's retirement. Why? Was Fleming so great that we need to compensate that much for his leaving? Jeffrey's given no guidance because the king has faith in him, and was told to assemble a 5-man strike force capable of covert assignments in foreign territories. He takes an airship named Angel Island, looking to recruit what I assume is Espio for a scout because he's a chameleon. This sounds interesting, though it would separate him from the Chaotix. If anything, that'd be a good thing because he'd have to have his actual personality shown, developed, because he'll be alone away from them more. Jeffrey spots Espio when he's invisible by using full spectrum binoculars and has him grabbed with shootable handcuffs to keep him from running off. Oh, I guess it's not Espio, because the text bubble says, Espio warned me about you, St. John. Once a Secret Service operative, always an operative. What's that supposed to mean? Is he being portrayed as a bad guy for this? Jeffrey says that he thought he'd be up for more fun and games, as if I'm supposed to already know what he's talking about. And then he goes to recruit that yellow down under freedom fighter who looks a little like Ray the Flying Squirrel, in spite of his young age. Naturally, the kid agrees because it's been too quiet around Down Under since Crockpot was defeated, and like Sonic, he's gotten too accustomed to risking his life as a hero. Jeffrey then talks with Hershey, who is coordinating various work details on rebuilding the city, and Jeffrey makes the unnecessarily rude remark sounds like something a SWAT could do. Comparing a girl to a death robot? Smooth. Fortunately, he's lucky enough that Hershey doesn't get annoyed and offended, and she instead says that Sally needed someone to do it and she was available. As I wonder if the two are growing fond of each other already, since Jeffrey seems to be hitting on her, Jeffrey tells her to take this device and show up at the armory tomorrow morning, and it turns out he's going to recruit her too. And the story ends with Jeffrey still trying to figure out who the last operative would be. I really don't see how most of them are qualified, honestly. Valdez the chameleon I get because he can turn invisible, but everyone else is just normal people with no special powers or skills. And even talked about skills before hiring the yellow down under kid, but we weren't shown those skills at all. They were hired more because they're characters we'd be more likely to care about than because they're clearly skilled. I mean, you could just make up skills for them, so it's not like you have to choose between one or the other. The first story was written by Mike Gallagher, and it was really underwhelming for a story that finally actually makes use of the Down Under freedom fighters again. Well, in heavy quotation marks, makes use, as none of them really get to do anything. They're just there. Sonic and Tails save them from the cage, they go on a raft and find Crockpot already defeated. Sonic uses a bullshit power while Tails has a more logical display of his magical powers. There's no explanation about why the Army of Duckbills ever agreed to do their evil deeds. We never learn about the hostage site or why Bill was so exhausted in this issue. And the story starts in media res and does a recap of events that the comic didn't have the space to make into a properly long story. At least in the Tails miniseries, these guys had boomerangs. Here they're just there. And they could have not existed and the plot would have gone the same way, albeit be less appealing without them. It's so frustrating. I thought Crockpot would finally get fought with and defeated and used in a satisfying way, and then gets defeated by Deus Ex Machina Bunyip off screen. It's almost as if he's supposed to be a comedic villain. But the fact that I just realized now that he was supposed to be not taken seriously, that maybe they were intentionally constantly robbing him of a satisfying fight, that's not funny. At least, it's like, he just gets defeated by Deus Ex Machina Bunyip off screen. At least there's a hope of seeing the Bunyip to look forward to. Carl Bollers wrote the second story, which was really short and only served to give us an actual explanation for how Sonic was tracking Ixis Naugus. Only we're going to see this tracker again anyways, so really this story is just pointless. And the only things I have to say about it are that it makes Sonic and Tails look like idiots for not getting suspicious of the Ixis-shaped cloud and figuring out what's going on right away. And I refuse to believe the weather would get all cleared up just because Sonic's plane ran into Ixis as a cloud. He's a wizard! You'd think it would just provoke a fight with Ixis that Sonic would lose, but instead he manages to keep on flying just fine despite his plane being shot down. It was stupid. And Ken Penders wrote the second story about Jeffrey hiring some elite agents for the Secret Service, with exactly one being obviously skilled enough for the job while the rest are just normal boring people who only got the job because they're characters we already know. More like they're hired by a marketing team. I mean, if Hershey and Discount Ray could shoot lasers out of their eyes, I'd understand, but instead they have no apparent skills to contribute, making their hiring look arbitrary and Jeffrey look clueless and incompetent. Hell, I don't even remember the yellow one's name. That's how little of an impact he made on me. At least this story seems to be leading to a more interesting one where we finally get all these characters doing important things and having screen time. I'm looking forward to that. Same goes for the previous story. Its only redeeming factor is that it seems to be leading up to a story that could be better.